We know that laughter is good for our health. It lowers stress hormones, which helps our immune system work better. But is this why a sense of humor evolved in humans? I mean, it's everywhere in people. On this episode, we explore the science of comedy. Could it be that humor is also really good for our mating lives? Welcome to Mating Matters, the podcast that looks at human behavior through a lens of evolutionary psychology and human mating strategy. Because we're here to reproduce. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh with producer Brooke Peterson. On this episode, Funny Is For Foreplay, we examine the evolution of humor in the human species and its role in courtship. Have you ever seen the clip of the late-night comedian Jimmy Fallon interviewing actress Nicole Kidman on his show? It's the one with 51 million views on YouTube. Now, their repartee includes the revelation that Nicole once had a tiny crush on Jimmy and was invited to meet him. Now, you'd have thought that a professional comedian would have crushed it at that fix-up. But this is how Nicole describes their meeting.
So Rick, our mutual friend, says, you know, Jimmy wants to meet you and you can go over to his apartment and da-da-da-da, and I'm single, and I'm like, okay, yeah, cool.
Wait, what?
Yes!
What are you talking about?
Yes!
Did I date Nicole Kidman?
Sure.
Did we
so
go, was
I
that a
go
date?
over, though, and you're there in a baseball cap and, like, nothing, just like...
I had brief
and I'm
cheese.
like, and you wouldn't talk. You didn't say anything. You were like, hey, Do you? Right? Is that
I didn't say. I was very nervous. I didn't
And
say,
I'm like, okay.
I didn't know this was
so
that this is a thing. I thought
it
this was a
like
movie.
a hang. It was meant to just, I don't know. And then you put a video game on or something, and I'm like, this is so bad.
So it seems that even the most skilled comedians can sometimes lose their A game when confronted with an A-list movie star. And after Fallon appears to recover over the new knowledge that Nicole Kidman once had a crush on him, Jimmy was ready to strut his best asset, his humor.
After that, yeah. Well, you made a much better decision. Keith Urban is so much cooler than I am. He's a rock star. You live in Nashville now.
I do, yeah.
Well, he's always on tour, isn't he? Constantly like...
No.
Yes, these country guys. Yes, he's always on tour.
You're not trying to be all serious.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to be serious now. Look, here's the deal.
Yeah.
I'm not always on tour. I'm always at home, hanging out.
Of course, most men are not professional comedians, and they rarely get to use jokes to impress a beautiful actress. But that doesn't mean that humor isn't a really important human trait, one that many men in particular are blessed with. Humorous men are easy to spot. In our studio, some of them had surprising responses to my questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, or if you compared to yourself to other men, where do you think you would fall on the humorous scale? Do you think you're a funny guy?
Oh my gosh, I was hoping you'd ask handsome. That's so much easier to answer. Because then I'd say, like, I don't know, is there something above a 10?
That was a current colleague of mine. And here's an old colleague from my TV hosting days, Dave Dorey. Dave.
Yes.
So I've known you a long time.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that you're one of these people that just makes me laugh.
Oh.
So I want to ask you about this because you've been a single guy on and off in your life. Do you deliberately use humor to attract women?
It's a weapon. It's a weapon that I sharpen every day. I've got many a rubber chicken that I wield. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that, like, you understand at an early age, like, okay, what do I got? Okay, looks-wise, like, all right, you know, okay. I mean, I was kind of, you know, you're kind of like a young, virile Don Knotts growing up, so that is a sexual powerhouse. But the thing is about humor is that we know when you're younger and in high school and stuff, it's valuable, it's great. But at the end of the day, they're still going to go over and bang Johnny Quarterback, right? But as women get older, my theory is really that the value of humor and these kinds of coping mechanisms, things, that value goes up. It goes up.
The value of humor does go up. But exactly what's the value for? Time to bring in another evolutionary psychologist. This one knows a thing or two about our funny bones.
I am Gil Greengross. I am a lecturer in Aberystwyth University in Wales. I am an evolutionary psychologist, and I study the evolutionary basis of humor and laughter.
According to Dr. Greengross, there's no agreed definition among researchers about what exactly humor is. Some people laugh when there seems to be nothing funny, and others laugh in concert with an audience sharing a joke. But there's one thing, says Dr. Greengross, that most humor does have in common, and that's the element of surprise, a punchline. For example, here's comedian Aziz Ansari on the Conan O'Brien Show talking about marriage proposals.
If you're going to propose, I think you should do something nice and sweet and special, because what you're asking of this person is an insane thing. It doesn't seem insane because, we're all familiar with marriage as an institution, but imagine if marriage didn't exist and you're a guy and you're asking a woman to get married. Imagine what that conversation would be. You'd be like, hey, so, you know how we've been spending a lot of time together, doing a lot of stuff together, hanging out and everything? Oh, yeah, I know. I want to keep doing that till you're dead.
The humor is really multi-faceted phenomena. It involves emotional aspect and physiological aspect, because when we laugh, when we experience humor, we feel it in our bones. When we laugh, we release endorphins. There is a whole sort of physiological changes in our body. It involves a cognitive element, because we have to process it in our brain in some way that will make sense and will make us laugh. There's a lot of cultural differences in humor. So even though humor is present in every culture that ever been studied, the type of jokes and humor that is used in each culture can vary a lot, and things that are funny to people in one culture or country may not be funny to people in another country. And there are also, yes, social intelligence is a big aspect of that, or generally social aspect of this, because humor is inherently a social phenomenon. We tend to laugh much more when other people are around us and when we interact with other people.
Listen for the cultural references in comedian Seth Meyers' new Netflix special, Lobby Baby, where he tells the story of how his child was born in the lobby of their apartment building in New York. There's a reference to Dr. Seuss's Green Eggs and Ham and the shifting gender roles in Western culture.
And all of a sudden, at the door, my wife stopped and turned to me and said, "The baby is here." Subtle, nuanced. From the people who brought you, I do not like this. The baby is here. And so once again, I go to my old standby of mansplaining, which, if you ladies forgot, is when a man uses no shared experience and says to his wife, "The baby is not here. You only think the baby is here. We have more than enough time to make it to the hospital. Take it from me, a man who has also had a baby out of his vagina."
Why do you believe, from evolutionary standpoint, we evolved to have humor?
Right. So, as I mentioned, humor is a universal phenomenon. It's experienced in every culture in the world. Moreover, it's actually experienced smiles and laughter. We can document it in other primates, our closest relative, chimps, bonobos, and so on. They also smile and laugh. Laughter developed very early in life. A smile developed in around 3-4 weeks after the baby is born. And what's interesting about it, that it developed spontaneously, not in response to the caretaker, the father, the mother, or whoever take care of the baby. And we know that because blind babies and deaf babies also smile spontaneously. So that means that there is some innate element to that. They learn after a few months to interact with their parents usually, and then they can respond to specific cues like playing peekaboo and stuff like that. So a specific interaction will make them laugh. They will be more selective, and it will be, again, part of the social aspect of humor.
Peekaboo!
The game of peekaboo, where an adult hides their face behind their hands or a blanket and then reveals themselves again, and the baby erupts in laughter. It's every human's first foray into the world of comedy. To understand the game, you have to understand that most good comedy is actually tragedy viewed from across the street. There's a tragic side to the game of peekaboo, too. It only works with babies who are less than 6 months old. That's when they develop something psychologists call object permanence. You see, young babies don't know that a parent's face is hiding behind their hands or blanket. When the face disappears in the first part of the game, the baby becomes terrified that their parent has died, is gone forever. When the face appears again, babies erupt in laughter to release the tension that they built up when they felt fear. Humor is a naturally evolved trait that, according to Dr. Greengross, helps evolution in 2 ways. Remember, there are 2 inherited channels that drive human evolution. One is called natural selection, meaning that we inherit traits that help us to survive. And to survive, we need each other. We are social, tribal creatures. If a hunter-gatherer found himself or herself left alone in the wilderness, certain death was likely imminent.
And humor can break the ice, can help ease the tension. It's important, a social phenomena. So definitely it has a lot of social function.
But the other important driver of evolution besides natural selection is sexual selection, meaning that we also inherit traits that help us reproduce. It doesn't matter if we're amazing survivors. If ancient humans couldn't attract and retain mates long enough to produce offspring, their genes aren't here today. According to Dr. Greengross, humor helps with both those aims.
Sexual selection deals with the importance of traits in mate selection, how this trait can increase your desirability as a mate to individual from the other sex. So humor here is hypothesized to be one such cue because it's highly correlated with intelligence, and intelligence is a very important trait to have, especially in ancestral times when we evolve. So if you were mating with someone who was intelligent, obviously you had a better chance of surviving, you had a better chance that husband or wife will help to provide for the future kids. So humor is, in a sense, a proxy of intelligence.
There are many, many studies that correlate high intelligence with a good sense of humor. One was mounted by our Dr. Gil Greengross, along with evolutionary psychologist Dr. Jeffrey Miller at the University of New Mexico. The 2 researchers tested 400 students for verbal intelligence and abstract reasoning. Then, to test their ability to produce humor, they asked the students to write captions on cartoons that were judged by others. Finally, they gave them a questionnaire that looked at their mating success. And you guessed it, the smartest group was also the funniest group and reported having the most sexual partners. And there's no doubt about it, humans value intelligence as a high-status trait. Now, most people don't do math computations on romantic dates. They don't court by spouting obscure historical facts or physics theorems. Instead, they showcase their intelligence by entertaining their prospective mates and making them laugh. Because laughter increases feel-good neurochemicals called endorphins and lowers the stress hormone cortisol.
I think because it makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. And I think it makes me feel comfortable too. Like guys feel comfortable too. You know, when you can get someone to laugh, you know, you feel like they're not on your side, but you know, they're interested in what you're saying and you're not boring them.
But here's the rub. According to Dr. Greengross's research, the stereotype that women aren't as funny as men is kind of true. His research looked at humor predictability.
So what we did, we looked at studies that ask participants to produce humor on the spot. A very good example of that is when researchers give a subject a cartoon that has no caption and ask them to write as many captions they can write that will be funny. Now, a key element of this task is that the humor has to be estimated by independent judges that are blind to any characteristic of the subject, meaning that they didn't know what their sex was, their age, and so on. And that included more than 5,000 participants. And we found that on average, men were rated as having higher humor ability than women, but the difference is not that large.
That's good news for the many talented female comedians who are much funnier than the average man. Women like Amy Schumer, Eliza Schlesinger, Ellen DeGeneres, Tina Fey, Sarah Silverman, Wanda Sykes, Ali Wong, Kathy Griffin, etc., etc. But the problem is that while these ladies can certainly earn a living, remember, natural selection equals survival, some have a harder time finding boyfriends. After all, humor is just not a trait that men often look for in female mates. At least it's not the top trait anyway.
If you're funny and you make me laugh, I love you for it, or you can sing, and I think that's great. But if you don't have the looks, okay, we can be friends. Doesn't mean I'm dating you.
But women love to choose humor in men.
Now, what's interesting about sexual selection is that the value of the trait is not equal for both sexes. Because women, or females in general in nature, undertake the heavier costs of reproduction, they tend to be choosier. So when selecting a mate, they pay more attention to different cues, and humor is one of them. So there's a lot of evidence showing that humor plays a sense of humor as one of the really first or second most desirable trait in a man, while men care less about women's sense of humor.
So when you find a man attractive, what kind of traits turn you on?
I think initially, let's be honest, looks draw you in right away. And then I think it's just the way he interacts with people. I think it's his personality. And is he intelligent? Is he easy to talk to? Is he witty? And then is he funny? Because that's just so attractive. It's so sexy.
Well, I look for style. I like a fashionable guy. I want him to be taller than me. I obviously look at his facial features, just to see what he's working with. I look for humor. I like funny guys. I like guys that are polite.
Humor can make a man who may have not won the genetic lottery when it comes to height, muscles, and facial structure suddenly look very attractive.
You always had that guy, too, that you sat there and said, that doesn't make any sense. She's way too good looking to be going out with him. And when you talk to her, it's like, oh, but he makes me laugh. And so we're always like, well, I thought, so women aren't as shallow as we are. They care about those things beyond looks, and that really blew all of us away because he had no business dating her.
Do you think humor can make you look even better looking?
Absolutely. I think humor is the salve that all of us put on our wounds of life. Life has sharp corners, there's a lot of pain. And I think humor is something that says, hey, I will find the silver lining no matter what. We will find it through humor. Everything deserves a good laugh.
This man says that humor helped him slay the competition for a woman who he says was way out of his league.
Humor had almost everything to do with our courtship because there were always little hovering, what I used to refer to as 90210s around her. All these little super classically handsome guys hitting on her. And I could come in with humor and sometimes at their expense and get her attention. Absolutely. It's the sharpest sword in my holster, that's for sure.
I went to Berkeley. Not that that's, a big deal or anything, but girls certainly, I find, are more interested when you're smart and when you're funny. So I definitely think, to answer your question, it has helped me out to get some girls that are out of my league, I guess you could say.
Yeah, oh gosh. Plenty of them. Well, my first girlfriend was Miss Missouri. no business with this person.
And this woman says she's well aware that she dated men below her mate status because they were so much fun.
You're just like, gosh, you're so fun to hang out with. So I'm just going to keep seeing you. Even if initially face to face, I wouldn't have necessarily looked twice. I would consider sticking around longer for sure.
Men really care that the woman that they are dating will laugh at their humor because that's a cue for them that the woman is interested in them romantically.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever laughed at a guy's joke when it wasn't really the funniest joke?
Yeah, I have.
And women know they can look interested and attractive to men if they laugh at a man's attempts at humor. So sometimes women use laughter as a mating strategy.
I actually do know a couple women that are like that. I think they do that because they just want to make themselves look more attractive in any way. And like if laughing at the guy's joke is gonna make them like them more, then they'll do it like wholeheartedly. So I think those are the type of women that are really looking to get into a relationship.
Do you like women who laugh at your jokes?
I love women that laugh at my jokes, even if I can tell that they're not laughing super genuinely. It still makes me feel good, even though just because they're laughing at my jokes, regardless of how much they actually think it's funny or not.
So men even know when we're faking it a bit.
Oh yeah.
And that's okay.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever laughed at a man's jokes when he wasn't super funny?
Yes, I felt guilty. I don't know why I did it, but I did.
Why?
Especially if it's a position of power. That is so weird to admit, but it's true. There's like the Chandler Bing work laugh. I think we all have that.
I think all bosses are funny. Don't you know that?
Naturally.
She's right. All humans are wired to lick the paw of the big dog, the person who wields power over them, usually in employment. And speaking of that, it's known that certain types of humor work better than others. And again, it all comes down to one's mate status. What kind of humor works?
I like the humor where it's not like a super thought out joke, but they could just be like funny and relatable at the same time and like the topic of conversation that we're having. I don't like super like corny like dad jokes or stuff like that.
I like it when a guy can, I don't know, quote a funny movie or someone that probably just rolls off the cuff easily and they don't even realize they're as funny as they are. I think that's probably the most attractive and the most funny quality when it's just natural for them. And you go, gosh, I could listen to you tell any story because you're hilarious.
All humor has certain values, but I think that dry James Bond, sarcastic,
positively shocking
kind of thing, that has more value than like goofy, completely, I did a lot of prop comedy on my first dates. No, not prop comedy, but, dry humor, self-effacing humor, that tends to work well.
And there are risky kinds of humor, too. For instance, self-deprecating humor, the kind where men jokingly put themselves down, isn't always the best choice.
That type of humor kind of shows that he might be insecure or he's dealing with like underlying issues that he doesn't like about himself. Yeah, I don't really like that type of humor either.
But there's a certain kind of man who should use self-deprecating humor.
So what happens is that self-deprecating humor can be very effective for high-status individuals because it allows them to make fun of themselves with still being confident in who they are. While if you are low status and you use self-deprecating humor, that can be seen as quite pathetic or quite demeaning, and people will think less of you. And this is exactly what we found. High-status individuals, both men and women, that use self-deprecating humor were considered to be more attractive compared to lower-status individuals that use self-deprecating humor that were reduced in their attractiveness.
Do you ever do self-deprecating humor?
All the time.
What do you think the strategy is there?
You know what? I think folks that do self-deprecating humor are folks that perceive themselves as being, one of the main bosses in the room. And if you're a boss in the room, you want to kind of make people around you feel a little more comfortable. And so you try to bring yourself more into the company that you're surrounded by. So the self-deprecating part then becomes more of fitting in, belonging, being one of the family, being one of the team.
Yep. That was a big cheese from our company. He knows the rules. Then there's dark humor. Remember I told you that humor is just tragedy viewed from across the street? Well, sometimes that street is a narrow footpath and the pain is very close to the comedy. One of the best examples of dark comedy is Fargo, the 1996 Oscar-winning movie written and directed by brothers Joel and Ethan Coen, starring Frances McDormand and William H. Macy. Fargo uses dark humor, also known as black comedy or gallows humor, to make light of a subject that is potentially offensive and painful. In this case, Fargo manages to make kidnapping, murder, and a horrific wood chipper scene funny.
We got a shooting. These folks drive by. There's a high-speed pursuit. Ends here, and then this execution type deal.
Yeah.
In order for it to work, you need a partner, an audience, who can also handle it.
My wife and I both have very dark sense of humor, very dark sense of humor, and almost nothing is off limits. So it becomes a wonderful tool. So much so that there's been times where she'll leave the room going, I hope I have the strength to kill you in your sleep. And we'll both start laughing because it's like, man, that's a great line. Like, if the line is funny, it's more important than the situation to us. So if it's funny, go for it, take it. And we use it all the time.
In general, couples who laugh together do stay together. Whether the humor is dark or not, humor can diffuse any kind of conflict.
Humor is like pouring oil inside of a machine. It makes all the internal parts work smoothly. If you can introduce humor into the mathematic equation of a relationship, it just runs smoother. It just works better.
I'm thinking recently when just driving down the road and I'm, looking at my husband next to me and we differ on something and it's kind of like, well, if I can make a joke about this situation, I'm going to get you to laugh and then maybe pull you over to my side. Maybe not, but at least we're going to feel better about it if we have to actually talk through it.
And for people who are funny, humor is a life survival skill.
Another great situation was I was going through a tax audit. When you go in for a tax audit, it is like the Death Star. It's just a black and gray, giant words, Internal Revenue Service in the lobby. And there's no one there. You're not human. There's just a single telephone and you press a button and they come pull your carcass into one of these cubicles. And it's the most terrifying thing because they want it to be terrifying. And it's just black and gray and just darkness everywhere. So they sat me down and I just said, I don't mind, writing a check to the government, but I think what I resent, and I think what all taxpayers resent, is that you guys clearly blow it all on interior decorating. And and she just kind of looked at me because she has to live there in this horrible environment. And so she exploded laughing, and I was like, oh, I might have her. Now, my numbers did line up, and everything worked out, and I didn't owe any additional money, but it was like a 4-hour sit-down audit, and I had her laughing the entire time, and I was sent on my way and even got to wave goodbye.
There's actually some good news for women who are funny. Remember the idea that men are funnier than women? Some people use as evidence the fact that there are far fewer professional female comedians than male. Well, Dr. Greengross chalks all that up to not evolution, but cultural bias. Yes, old-fashioned sexism and barriers to employment in the comedy industry.
Humor in California and the humor in, the crowd in Alabama are not exactly the same. So good comedians will know to perform to different crowds. And women tend to establish families earlier, and having a kid, it's much harder for them to travel with a kid, while men can leave the kid at home.
And Greengross says the myth that being funny isn't a mating strategy for women is dead wrong.
Interestingly, a previous study that I did that actually tried to correlate humor ability of men and women with mating success found that the funnier women were also enjoying more mating success just as their counterpart men. But it seems that because of evolutionary forces, they're just not as motivated to express their humor. And as I said before, men are just not that much impressed by their sense of humor. It's usually not seen as a negative thing. It's just that men don't care if a woman has a great sense of humor.
In other words, it's likely the intelligence associated with humor is what helps women have mating success. And female comedians like Amy Schumer are fearless about flaunting their mating success and canceling the notion of a sexual double standard.
Guys are so gross, right? Guys are gross. You're gross, okay? They're so gross. I had sex with a guy recently, more semen than you've ever seen in your life. I was like, did you just get out of jail? What is the meaning of this? It's a compliment. No.
Comedian Eliza Schlesinger is equally happy to flaunt female sexuality.
And the most nerve-wracking part of a new relationship when you're younger is the first time a boy comes over to your apartment. Because it's ostensibly like your girlfriend audition time. Like, you want him to come in and be like, oh, it's so homey, I'd like to stay forever. And you're like, yes, come closer. Like, that's what you want. You try so hard in your 20s, right? Because you're young and it's fun. That's your 20s. In your 30s, you don't try. Your 30s, homeboy knocks on the door, you open it, you're standing there in combat boots, nothing else, and a garbage can on fire. You're like, welcome to Fuck Dome, Scott.
My old friend Dave Dorey says times are changing, and Johnny Quarterback's muscles may be less attractive than a dude with big brains.
Maybe our genes were tell us like, well, more muscles, more ability to bring home some dead animal, and we can all eat. That's not the case. Someone who looks like Bill Gates or some other guy who is a tech wizard. Where technology has kind of taken away, has kind of marginalized the muscle factor in many ways. Now it's someone who might be quick and funny and things like that. They might have the ability to bring home the bacon much more than the guy who lives at the gym. And it's just like how a guy would look at, say, a Hooters waitress. And my caveman says, well, you have big boobs, so that's good for feeding my children. You got childbearing hips and muscle tone. But we know that in today that it takes much more than that. That takes more evolved thinking. And so hopefully you find yourself another evolved person.
No matter what gender you are or what gender you're attracted to, a sense of humor is a big asset, both for survival and for human mating.
It makes you want to stick around longer. That's for sure. It draws you into a conversation. And I think it kind of shows you something about their intelligence and maybe even their, I don't know if social adaptability is the right word, but it means, okay, you get it. You know how to read a room. You understand this person is interesting to talk to, and you know how to draw people in. I think that's really attractive.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mating Matters. It's interesting, as we compiled it, producer Brooke brought something to my attention. Did you listen to the words that the men used when describing their comedy? They talked about it as their best weapon, tool, something in their arsenal, the sharpest sword. Yes, men think of human mating strategy as a battle to be won, but not a battle against women. A battle against other men to compete for women's attention. If you'd like to hear more about this, you might want to listen to two of our most popular episodes on Mating Matters. One is called The Trouble with Testosterone. The other is called The Price of Manhood. Then you'll get it. Thanks for listening to Mating Matters. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh with producer Brooke Peterson. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Mating Matters is produced in partnership with iHeartMedia. It is researched, interviewed, and written by me, Dr. Wendy Walsh, and it is edited and produced by Brooke Peterson. People don't learn about podcasts usually by just searching around. They learn about a podcast because somebody who loved that podcast told them about it. So please subscribe, write a review, and more than anything, hit that share button now. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh. If you'd like to call the Mating Matters message line, you certainly can. The number is 323-207-8277. That's 323-207-8277. If you got a question, we want to hear it. Or maybe you have a comment. Either way, we love to hear from you, our listener.